Hey everyone, welcome to Sociastrology. Today we're going to take a look at the Saturn-Neptune conjunction that is going to be taking place in the sign of Aries throughout this year. It's also going to carry forth for a couple of years. It'll go exact on the 20th of February of next year. And we've also been seeing it get closer and closer in the sign of Pisces since pretty much last year when it started to get into orb, but really they've been co-present even in Pisces since March of 2023. So we'll look at this from the perspective of the fact that this is going to be taking place now in Aries. And we'll look at this from a personal perspective, how this is likely to be impacting individuals. And then we'll also take it through the signs to see how this is going to be affecting you. And I do recommend that you follow your rising sign so that this plays out in the correct whole sign house in your birth chart. Now, this transit is something that is quite near and dear to my heart. I have an exact Saturn-Neptune conjunction in my own chart as I was born in March of 89 when it last went exactly conjunct at 12 degrees of Capricorn. But it's something that I've spent at this point well over a decade, probably about 2 decades, really meditating on and trying to better understand for the sake of my own life and my own experience of my life, but also what it's been indicating to me that I should be doing with my life. And so I've spent really a lot of time digging into this and trying to understand it very well. And it's something that I have learned is, while certainly a double-edged sword, it's something that I count as a blessing at this point that I have this in my chart. So I have spent some time really meditating on this again recently. I've written up some notes based on not only my experience having this in my chart, but also then even the experience that I've seen on a personal level and then collectively as well as we've even gotten closer to this conjunction, as we've been seeing this play out increasingly since 2023. So, with all of that said, during this transit, we will likely be presented with a search for meaning, not just because we necessarily want to, but because we are becoming disillusioned. That's something that we can experience in waves of a strong belief, a strong faith in something, and then having that wane and needing to come back to ourselves to better understand why we may have come into a belief that didn't stick with us, how we may have grown from that, what we may have learned from that. So we recognize under this influence faulty beliefs, the empty promises, the structures that we once relied on that no longer hold weight for us. And so we wind up seeking something deeper, something truer for us, something more meaningful for us, hopefully more lasting with Saturn here. And not just for the world, but in a fundamentally personal way. And I'll be getting into that a little bit more in a moment here. But this search for meaning, it often requires a sense of sacrifice. We may be called to let go of something that we rely on, sometimes even something that defines us. And this can be a willful surrender, but sometimes external forces can really force our hand and make this choice for us to have to come back to something that is falling away for us. And when this happens, there is also always an opportunity to create something new in that space. There's always that opportunity, believe me. So something more aligned with who we truly are. And this in itself is a contribution to the world. And what I mean by that is that on a deeply personal level, through the example that we set by forging our own path, we wind up showing others that this can be done. And that is one thing that I feel is often carried by Saturn conjunct to Neptune transits and placements like this. So we may be asked to sacrifice time, energy, emotions for something that's greater than us ourselves, for a cause. Looking at this from a Neptunian perspective of something that is deeply believed in, but then also Saturn, this tends to have to do with something in and of the world. As when I discuss this transit in terms of mundane astrology, which I'll do quite soon here, that should become a lot more clear. This is a very, very world-based, world-concerned transit and placement. We see that time and time again, that it's truly about the human condition. That's what it's addressing. So in doing so, we wind up then gaining clarity about our own values, our own priorities, and what truly matters to us. Now, there is then an aspect of needing to face reality and limitations in this as well, because without that, this would go really, really wide and would probably culminate in a level of sacrifice that isn't quite sustainable. So often we are forced to confront reality, to acknowledge our limitations with this. And sometimes we have been clinging to something that never truly was right for us, or trying to force us into a mold that didn't actually fit. So with this conjunction in Aries, we may also realize that where we once thought that we could handle everything alone, that we do need to ask for help. And we may then also need to adjust our commitments, making them more sustainable, more fulfilling, and more aligned with who we are becoming. One thing that I can definitely say to this transit and what it's going to bring up for people is really, really not liking to make a promise and then not be able to fulfill on it. That is one of like the biggest senses of failure that this placement can bring. And just to use another kind of pop culture figure who has this in their chart is Taylor Swift, who, yes, she may not have necessarily had to deal with a bunch of straightforward hardship or whatnot, but she does set a really high standard for herself and she delivers on that very like inexhaustibly. Even if you're tired, even if you're exhausted, if you've made a promise, if you've set a date, you better meet that date, you know. And then also recognizing the contributions of those around her too, and not necessarily doing this for glory as the fuel for her. But it does seem like she is really fueled by wanting to be something for her fans, wanting to hold a sense of meaning for other people more broadly, and people who can relate to her and what she writes about. Full disclosure, I don't think that I've literally ever heard a Taylor Swift song. I don't know how it's possible, but I only know her as she shows up in the world. So I don't really understand the whole like what she writes about and everything, but I did also notice that she named one of her albums 1989 when this transit wound up taking place. But ultimately, there is, with Aries in the mix here, a struggle for individuality. So this transit is going to push us toward individuation very, very strongly. We are definitely called to establish our identity here, not in relation to something else. This is what it means to be individuated, not as part of an external group, but for ourselves. And often we unknowingly surrender a part of our identity or a sense of control over who we are, our choices, our values, our perspectives to something outside of us. And this happens in our families when, as children, we wind up struggling to individuate from our parents. It happens in friendships where we can struggle with peer pressure and making choices based on what other people will think. And we also do this in our workplaces by trying to fit into the culture of a given workplace or a given industry in order to carry that identity with us so that we can basically be seen as a part of the group as well. And this is because ultimately human beings seek security in social acceptance. So this has been the foundation of our evolution ultimately. But this transit in Aries is really challenging us to break away and to define ourselves on our own terms. And it's not going to be an easy process for sure. It's going to be an ongoing struggle throughout these years to define ourselves for ourselves, but it's one that's going to be really strongly emphasized and supported during this time. That's another thing that I have personally found with this transit, or not this transit, but this placement, having it, is that I've gone through some weird difficulties that I can definitely chalk up to the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in my chart, having to make a lot of sacrifices, even like through childhood and everything, and not having control over them. But really always feeling like, especially in those moments, that I was really backed up and that ultimately, when it came down to it, I didn't need to worry because nothing was going to be taken away from me, which was fundamentally me, or which I really fundamentally needed to be okay, you know? So that is one thing that we can rely on here, is that there's also a great spiritual support for what it is that we're willing to surrender, and through that surrender finding a source of stability and security that isn't necessarily human. You know, it probably is in some forms, but is much more spiritual. It can feel a lot more like the universe has your back, so to say. So this period will be forcing us to face our fears, as the limitations that we place upon ourselves can often become something of a comfort zone for us and our shield against uncertainty, against the pressure of really trying to answer fundamental, like existential questions for ourselves in a critical manner, based on whatever comes up in any given moment, starting from scratch and really trying to answer for ourselves. So this Aries energy is really going to wind up demanding that we step outside of those boundaries that we place for ourselves. And we may also wind up then needing to stand up for ourselves and take calculated risks here and embrace the broader vision, the if only I knew that I wouldn't fail, what would I do? Kind of a vision that we do hold for ourselves and for our lives. And so we may really long to become who we truly want to be, but we may also then at times under this influence hesitate out of a sense of fear. That's one thing that always winds up coming up with Saturn-Neptune conjunctions too, is just a sense of fear that needs to be overcome, whether that be fear of rejection, fear of inadequacy, fear that we're not strong enough, not capable enough, that other people will see us in a way that's very different from what it is that we're actually trying to do, that they won't understand, basically. And yet, if we want to grow through this process, we do really need to confront those fears head on. And by doing so, you know, again, another thing that I found in my life is that when I do push myself in that way, and I'm like, I don't care about the fear, I just need to do this thing. Ultimately, those are the moments when things wind up turning out like shockingly well. So you can get a strong support from this. I don't think that Saturn just puts us through tests and trials for the sake of it. I genuinely believe that the way that it shows up is to push us to mature, to develop, to grow. And that in and of itself is a reward. But personally, I've always found that there are additional rewards that wind up coming through this this placement. So with any Saturn transit, of course, persistence is really key. And in Aries, we're definitely going to be tested along those lines. And we may face setbacks. We will definitely experience some delays. Aries is very impatient, but Saturn rules time and especially longer periods of time. And it also doesn't just bend to our desires to speed things up. So the path here to achievement during these upcoming years, really until 2028, when Saturn fully moves on from Aries, it's going to take longer and require more effort than we would prefer. And if we stay the course, though, we really remain disciplined, dedicated, structured in what it is that we're doing. I'm committed to what it is that we're doing. I'm very fully confident that we will be rewarded in many different ways, not just in the ways that we are setting out to be rewarded. So by setting routines, again, creating structures, following through even when it seems almost impossible, even if it's just a little bit, a little bit, a little bit each day, we wind up then building something greater than just the accomplishment itself. We build up then our own sense of resilience and strength through that process. Even if we can't guarantee a specific outcome, we can guarantee that through discipline, we wind up emerging stronger, braver, more capable than we were before. Also, in this period of time, I am super confident that a lot of us are going to be crystallizing a new identity for ourselves. And I think that the placements, the retrogrades that we've had between the cusp of Pisces and Aries, which really speaks to the collective, the universal, that which is includes us but goes beyond, to the greatest extent beyond us. And then Aries, which very much is us. It's that seed, of the universe, basically, that's within us. Those retrogrades that we've been experiencing, the eclipses that we've been experiencing across this cusp as well, I really feel is setting us up for a major renewal of our identity. But we do need to then crystallize it, or rather, not even we need to. We have a really wonderful opportunity to crystallize a new identity for ourselves with this conjunction and with these transits here. So we will definitely, through this process, wind up being required then to ask of ourselves, in order to take advantage of that opportunity, what is it that I truly value? Who do I truly want to be? What truly makes me proud? Where have I been false with myself? Have I handed control over myself to something outside of myself? I think for all of us, we can answer that in the affirmative in some way or another, just because of the fact that we live in societies as human beings. But also then, have you sold yourself short in doing so? Have you sold yourself short due to something that you've allowed to control yourself too much, that is external to you? So this is going to be a period of deep self-reflection. That is one thing that Saturn conjunct to Neptune can help us with, is taking time out to just be quiet and just sit with ourselves and to really embrace, in a sense, disillusionment. It is going to be inevitable with Saturn and Neptune together in Aries. And some of that disillusionment with us being in Aries is going to be with ourselves. But if we can face that truth without then retreating into a sense of denial, then we can come through this process and out of this process feeling much more authentically ourselves, feeling much more in touch and aligned with our own sense of self through this process. Now, for sure, this also brings with it a great sense of existential crisis, for sure. The search for truth is not always an easy one. Some people are straight up going to experience this as dark nights of the soul. And I think that by relaxing into that, and I can only say this as someone who has this placement where, yeah, I always want to be achieving. I always want to be pushing. I always want to be doing something out in the world. But there have been periods of time where I've just had to embrace, all right, we're going to slow way down. We're going to go way internal. We're really not going to be extroverting or trying necessarily to get something going on the outside right now. We're just going to look within. We're just going to take some time to realign, and that is always just the most fruitful periods of my life because then coming out on the other side, so much easier to then put something into motion here. So Saturn and Neptune, they both take things very, very seriously, even in Aries. So in Aries, they're going to be working on our identity, which is to say we're going to be taking that area of our life just so seriously. And there may be some feelings of existential dread that wind up arising for us, like questioning everything that we thought we knew. And the key here is not to suppress those feelings. It's really to explore them because it's through then exploring those feelings that we're able to tap into something that feels a lot more true. Then we're able to really get at the root of what's going on, which is what Saturn and Neptune are both truly interested in. They're not really interested in anything other than the root, the crux of the issue. And so then asking ourselves if we face some disillusionment, especially with ourselves, like when did that start? Where did that wind up arising from? Is there something that we can put our finger on that caused us? And even better, is there something we can put our finger on that caused this inside of ourselves? Because it's very easy to blame others, but ultimately, I think that the way that this placement winds up rewarding us is through, even if we've been a victim of some sort of a situation, to really drill primarily into how is it that I wound up becoming victimized and what can I do differently in order to better respond to a situation like that? How can I be better prepared for something like that? How did I contribute to any given problem that I wind up facing? And just addressing that at its root, and it winds up putting you in such a better position going forward. Now, I can also absolutely guarantee, looking at the world right now, also, again, I don't mean to speak to myself a lot here, but having Saturn and Neptune conjoined in my own chart has also had this kind of search for truth and the root of issues be just a huge theme throughout my entire life. And so, because of the fact that then I have found ways of going around the media, in part by being a part of the media as having been a journalist. And that, of course, was why I wanted to go into journalism. But finding a way around the media, also because what I discovered from doing that is that, yeah, there's no way to get like really at the truth from the media. You're always getting some curation. You're always getting some specific kind of a perspective through that. But by doing that, there are certain things that people that I love for their views have really been missing the plot about recently. And I am not really going to go into this too much because I really feel like people need to figure this out for themselves. And there's always backlash if you wind up telling someone that something that they've been believing about is ultimately going to prove to not be true. And also, I had to experience this at a major point in my life of actually really a couple times where there were things that I just really believed in, specifically politically, that I then had to go through that huge disillusionment process with. So that's something that we're all definitely going to be experiencing. It's not just the people who we disagree with that are going to be learning some of the error of what they have believed. It's definitely going to be across the board in this time. So we may feel really then disillusioned with the world around us by the narratives that we once believed about the world, the structures, the people and the actors that we once trusted. And this can bring then a sense of guilt and regret, even anger or a sense of remorse or frustration. But the thing with this is that the way to get through it is not to wallow, but to just really continue to seek truth, because that's ultimately all that we can do is just become more and more and more attuned to what does it look like when we're not receiving the truth? What does it look like? Often it is the demonization of other people. Typically, if someone is actively demonizing something to you, especially when they are a media outlet that is owned by billionaires and so forth, you're not getting the truth. That should be number one, something that you pick up on. So the way through, again, not to wallow, just to continue to seek truth. We all wind up going through this process repeatedly, ultimately throughout our lives with these Saturn-Neptune conjunctions, and to open ourselves up to then perspectives we may have previously dismissed, especially those demonized by one side or another, wherever one is on the planet, whatever side one is on, to then redefine our values not based on external authorities, but from within. And I think that that's going to be absolutely really crucial to avoiding some of the greater frustration that winds up arising for everyone involved in the coming years as these narratives, more than anything, as the narratives start to come apart, because we've really been relying on a lot of these narratives for like a half a century at least at this point. So, one of the most powerful aspects then of this transit is the opportunity also to bring dreams into reality. That's another thing that we see with these kinds of placements is that this isn't just about wishful thinking, it's about taking real, tangible steps toward a vision. And this then requires a sense of self-sufficiency and belief in oneself and determination. It requires then facing fears, facing our doubts, but it also then brings the opportunity to create something truly magical, not through illusion, but through effort. And that's where I really think that the magic comes through in our lives, is that there is a magic and alchemy in the process of us putting our effort, our energy, our emotion, our beliefs, our intentions into something, and then seeing that become something greater than something we've created. That is the alchemy of reality here. So putting energy into something, seeing it come to light, this transit really then makes that abundantly clear for us. And in Aries, it's really then going to highlight the magic, so to say, of our own strength and resilience. And I think that this is also something, just looking at the world, that a lot of us are doubting, myself included. Uh, we're in some weird times. And one thing that I've noticed recently is sometimes I lose track of say a YouTube channel or something for a while, and then I come back to it. And recently, when I've been coming back to people that I have listened to a lot, I know the tone of their voice, I know how they present and everything. People are subdued, and that is something that I've personally always kind of even attributed to my own Saturn Neptune generation, is that we are a lot more subdued. The like very late 80s, very early 90s generation, we are a lot more slow and quiet in just the way that we do things. So it can definitely be part of the Saturn Neptune conjunction that's kind of being created in the ether. But I think people are also just freaked out by the condition of the world right now, and people are a lot more quiet. I feel like people are smiling somewhat less, and to me, it is kind of heartbreaking because I know how that feels, and I'm certainly feeling it. But again, this is one of the reasons why I feel like having this is a major blessing. And so, if we're able to look at this transit not as a test, but as a blessing of resilience for us in this period of time that we really need. I think that that's just going to make the fact that these will be somewhat more solemn years, and we're going to be taking things very seriously. then to make that a little bit easier on ourselves as people who love to have our spirits lifted, you know. But there's a way of this. I do feel like Neptune can really romanticize Saturn quite a bit. That's another thing that I really love about this alignment is that there can be then the romanticization of life and reality itself. Whatever it is, this is life. And it's beyond improbable. The fact that we exist here, the fact that the planet's here, the fact that the universe exists, like all of this is so utterly improbable. The fact that we're now starting to understand more and more on like a quote unquote scientific level, interconnection and consciousness and how that winds up playing out on the animate and inanimate level, these like higher dimensions and the fact that all of the dimensions wind up then probably folding in on each other if string theory at all winds up panning out, which on some level it probably will. But then also the magic of the fact that we've known a lot of this stuff for like 3, 4, 5,000 years on some level, and we're able through our own consciousness to just tap into that. And the fact that humanity's been through so many trials, and that each time somehow, ultimately, it seems like we do wind up becoming a lot of us, at least, the vast majority of us, at least, more compassionate and more heart-centered through all of that, that we wind up coming together, that we wind up supporting each other, and also then not just romanticizing the glory and the jewels and the trappings and the luxury of the haves that we're always basically struggling with. And I am going to probably speak to some of I know the Communist Manifesto actually is a Saturn-Neptune conjunction as well, was when it was written and published. And, a couple of the lines from that is um, that the history of all hitherto existing society is a history of class struggle. And I still remember that was one of the disillusioning moments to me, was when I first started kind of recognizing beyond just the US Democrat Republican politics, a kind of broader perspective then, and the fact that there are so many different perspectives globally. And the fact that probably in the US we are in for more of a rude awakening than most of the world for sure. Very, very overdue, sadly. But then also the fact that toward the end of the text, I think it's actually the last line, that the line is like workers of the world unite, something like all you have to lose is your chains. And so both of these are very Neptune Saturn. They are the romanticization of the quote unquote like actually existing working classes, the actually existing very mundane situation that we find ourselves in, the human condition. And the fact that we probably should not be, again, identifying with something outside of ourselves. There's this attitude in the United States that's been quite popular recently, of this attitude of being an embarrassed millionaire or a temporarily embarrassed billionaire or whatever, where regular people wind up supporting certain policies that hurt them just because they falsely identify with a class that they do not belong to and never will belong to, you know? And we see this wind up coming up repeatedly with Saturn conjunct to Neptune, is again the romanticization of everyday life and everyday people. And so at least we can take some pride in who we all literally are, and not then have to feel some sense of shame or embarrassment that we're not something horrible, that we're not. We should take pride in the fact that we're not that, you know? So these are definitely some of the things that we're going to be pushing throughout this period of time. is then romanticizing our own strength, our own ability, even our own ability then to shape our reality. The fact that we are the ones that wind up building the world, even while those who seek so much of the glory wind up almost always being the ones who wind up then tearing that down through cycles and cycles and repeatedly and repeatedly. We really need to stop identifying with those people. I'm gonna totally soapbox there and just say that because I've gotta be, I've got to rep my own Saturn conjunction to Neptune in this video at least. But yeah, so we'll definitely be overcoming imagined limitations as well. So one of the greatest lessons that this transit is also going to be bringing up is recognizing that many of the limitations that we face are self-imposed. So we may believe that we're incapable of something, be it individually or collectively, only then to be placed in a position to where we are forced to act, and through that, then realizing a specific goal that we thought was impossible, realizing through that process that we always were capable of doing that. This is a classic Saturn conjunct to Neptune way of playing out, basically. And we may wind up then believing that a certain circumstance is an immovable barrier. Those do not exist during this period of time. That is something to keep in mind. And then only to have it unexpectedly and often very quickly removed, really forcing us to reassess then what's truly possible. Now, finally, another thing that I find with this transit is that there's a sense of a need for integrity and delayed gratification that's baked in here. And so this transit's really going to challenge our convictions and how tightly we hold to them. So we may be tempted to then take shortcuts to compromise our values. This is where I would expect the tests to come in specifically. But the choice then to maintain our integrity, even when it's difficult, will definitely become a defining theme here. And keeping in mind also under this influence that short-term ease often winds up leading to long-term struggle. And there's even this quote of that hard times create strong men. Sorry to gender this, but it is a quote. And then strong men create easy times, and easy times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. And so there's something of that really also baked into that Saturn conjunction to Neptune. That it's when we refuse to delay gratification, it's when we seek the easy way through something that we wind up really suffering some consequences from that, because consequences are always on the table when we're dealing with Saturn, shall we say. So true fulfillment then comes from choosing the path of good, clean effort and honesty, integrity, even when it's not the most convenient thing to do. So in summary, basically, this is not an easy transit. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, even though I do love it as a thing. I've come to love it, shall I say. It is, though, one of the most rewarding for sure. It's not simply going to hand us what we want, but it will give us what we need, and it will show us that we are capable of creating what we want if we're willing to put in the time and the effort and the energy into something, the strength and the discipline and the perspective that's required to bring something about. And so the ability then here shows up to create lasting meaning. These transits tend to usher in a 36-year long period of things kind of doing what they're doing at these points in time. So this is a real crystallization moment. I definitely want to emphasize that. And so it is what we create in this time together and for ourselves individually that ultimately winds up defining decades to come. This is really a critical transit here. And then again, the understanding that the real magic of life is not quick fixes. It's not just, writing something down and putting it in a drawer and then having it happen for us. It's not these kinds of fleeting rewards, but the real magic in life is through persistence, through integrity, through the courage to face ourselves then fully as well. So for those really willing to engage in this process, the rewards ultimately will be immeasurable, not just in achievements, but through the fundamental transformation of who we are and how we experience life itself, how we perceive of our own personal resilience and capability, shaping again then in Aries, our sense of identity, our sense of strength, and our convictions that are going to carry us forward, and to receive then the rewards of all of these trials. Again, not all tests, some tests, but definitely some trials coming up to further strengthen us through this period of time, to create the easy times, to create the good times. So, with all of that said, I do want to then take this through the signs. And yes, this is mostly for rising sign. If you want to check it out for your sun, you are free to. But the theory behind this is that I'm reading this conjunction in a whole sign house in your birth chart. So that's how it'll hold best, is by reading for your rising sign. So with all of that said, before we dive into the sign by sign, since I know that people jump to the timestamp and then they hop out of the video, I do just want to thank you all for being here. I really hope that this transit treats you well. I hope that it gives itself as good of a reputation to those experiencing it as a transit as it has to me, basically having experienced it almost as a transit for 36 years now. In time, you wind up learning to work with it, I promise. But yeah, we're going to look at this then on a mundane level very shortly here. I also have some other videos that I know are coming up, the Mars opposition to Pluto, and looking at that in individual charts, and then also looking at the minor grand trine that's going to be created and will hold throughout the rest of this decade between Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto in these new, very active signs that they're in. We'll be looking at that as well this month. But with all of that said, I do especially want to thank the members of this channel for their support. So to Angel Niblock, Patrick McKenney, Startlingly True, Deborah Keel Levitt, Gary A., Stacy Bergener, Maria Cyril Hyro, Michelle Howell, JJ, Jody Z, C. Rezer, Anne Marie, Lynn Newman, Rachel Windholtz, Peace Out, Lisa S., Aya, and the Z-Man 1291. Thank you so much for your support, and much love to you and to everyone. If you guys don't mind hitting the thumbs up on this video, that would help it to spread around a lot more, and that helps me to be able to continue to make these videos and put this content out there and connect with you all, which I absolutely love to do. So I greatly, greatly appreciate that. And yeah, if you like content like this, where I take a given transit through the houses and then also look at it from a mundane perspective as well, then do consider sticking around by hitting the subscribe button. I would love to have you here for future videos. And without any further ado, let's go ahead and take this through sign by sign. Okay, so for Aries rising, this is taking place in your first house of your self and identity, your self-image. And so this transit is going to be deeply, deeply personal for you. It's really about redefining who you are, confronting fears of self-sufficiency, embracing again that new identity that this is bringing through. It's going to be super, super strong for you, aligning you better with your own personal values. And this is really just going to bolster the heck out of your sense of defining yourself for yourself. It's, I think, going to be an absolutely amazing transit to experience. Not the most lighthearted, but again, really going to have a lot of rewards for it. So you may experience some disillusionment about past beliefs regarding yourself. You may discover that you had a self-limiting belief that you literally were unaware of, and that may become very frustrating because you may then recognize, wow, if I didn't think that, then I would have gone for this opportunity, or I would have done this thing if I didn't have this sense that for some reason I couldn't, and then not being able to put my finger on why that even was, because this may have just been in the background. It may have just been something that you were conditioned to believe, basically. And so then try to see this as an opportunity to build a more authentic and resilient self through this period of time. And challenges may arise that wind up pushing you to be a lot more disciplined, a lot more persistent, and to take that on as a stronger part of your identity going forward. You'll probably, by the end of this, really mark that as something of, this is who I am. These are the traits and characteristics that I know that I carry with me, is a lot of discipline and persistence. And through then those challenges, you wind up then emerging stronger, much, much more independent, and much more aligned then with your own sense of purpose. Again, this may bring up some sense of a dark night of the soul. The best thing that I can say for that is go with it. Please don't think that you're being punished at all. Please don't think that there's something wrong with you. Usually I've personally found, so I will speak for myself, but when going through moments like that, I often find that by the end of it, what I recognize is that there's a sense in which I've needed to be purified and purged of something that I was holding on to. And it was only through really taking some time to go within and really focusing on who, like being almost forced then to come back to, who truly am I? What am I doing here? I know that that information is within me. So I need to look within to find that, basically, and then meet the world where it is, and then bring it out into the world, often with much more ease by the end of it. So it's not that ease is always the enemy, but during this period of time, it's more about working yourself up to that position of being able to find that things are easier than they have been because of the removal of those self-limiting beliefs, because of the fact that you're not wrestling with doubt, you're not of two minds about certain things. You know that you can handle something, and so you will. And so there's no need to hesitate. There's no need to waste time or energy with doubt. So by the end of this, that will be understood, but I can't sugarcoat it. Probably there's going to be some things that wind up arising throughout this period of time that are going to force you then to realize that. And this doesn't have to be like, oh, this is months and years of difficulty or anything. It can be a moment that is like, okay, well, I know that I have no choice but to just do this, so I'm just going to do it. I'm not going to think about it. And often you can then really push through something almost I don't know if you've experienced this, but in moments of like needing to respond to something very very strongly and without hesitation, it can almost feel like an out-of-body experience where you just respond, and then only in hindsight are you like, wow, okay, well, I guess I can do that. I had no idea. So yeah, I think that this is going to be an absolutely wonderful in hindsight transit for you, but there's definitely going to be some interesting trials that make you much more mature and much stronger. So yeah, that is what I have for you, Aries rising. I hope that it treats you wonderfully, and thank you so much for being here. So for Taurus rising, for you, this transit is going to be taking place in your 12th house of your subconscious and spirituality, the kind of conditioning that we experience, the things that we experience when we are in isolation. And so for you, this transit is really about deep internal work. This is likely to bring you much more much closer, much more emotionally invested, much more energetically and with intention, much more intentionally connected to your sense of spirituality. And by that, I mean even like cosmology, like why we're here. These big existential questions will probably be coming up a lot. But old illusions, hidden fears, subconscious limitations may also wind up surfacing here and really then forcing you to confront what's been operating behind the scenes in your life, throughout your life, possibly for a very long period of time, possibly for like 36 years or more. And so that can be pretty intense, but it's ultimately going to allow for you to uproot some of that conditioning if it is at all self-limiting. So, like I said, this is a time of really profound, then spiritual development as well and self-exploration. And I do really feel like these two together in the 12th house really points to the fact that solitude and introspection is very likely going to be necessary in order to process some of the shifts that are going on for you throughout this period of time. And I wouldn't shy away from being way more introspective. I would I would not let people make you feel bad or like there's something wrong for that. That's really where you're going to be getting the most benefit is out of that kind of solitude and introspection. It's also then an opportunity to release some self-sabotaging patterns that you may carry that you may not even be aware of, and therefore create a new foundation for a sense of inner peace and self-understanding and trust of yourself, which can be so much more fruitful almost than anything else for eliminating fears. If you trust yourself, then there's a lot of fears that can just automatically be released. And so, yeah, I think that this is going to be a really fascinating time for you. It may feel like a weirdly the way that I would perceive of this is as a weirdly gentle dark night of the soul, if it does wind up coming through as one of those. Now, you may be really forced, like if you have a specific type of habit, especially if it has anything to do with substances or things like that, um, codependency, things like that, where you can really put your finger on it. I am quite sure that that's going to be kind of coming to a head and you're going to be forced to deal with that in this period of time. But otherwise, the kind of like dark night of the soul here, it should be actually quite gentle. You may actually really be able to romanticize it and in some sense enjoy it through these years of getting more and more in touch with these much more important questions in life than just what's going on in our day-to-day local space kind of lives here. This is going a lot more spiritual for you than it is for most people. So I definitely would not shy away from that. And yeah, that is pretty much what I have for you, Taurus rising. So for Gemini rising, this transit is going to be taking place in your 11th house of community, friends, beneficial contacts, and aspirations, hopes, and dreams. And so this transit is really pushing you to redefine your place and your role in the world and within your social circles, but again, broadly within society itself. And then pushing you also to define this kind of broader vision that you have for your future. Again, this is all about crystallizing a vision with Saturn touching Neptune here. So friendships during this time may dissolve if they no longer then align with your evolving identity throughout this period of time. But new connections which do support your growth will almost certainly wind up emerging throughout this time too. For you in this time, one thing that I like to focus on with the 11th house is that the placements in this house, the transits in this house, do themselves often present friends. So with Saturn transiting your 11th, I do like to look at it as Saturn's your friend during this time. Saturn is a beneficial contact for you during this time. Saturn is a wonderful hope and dream and goal for you throughout this period of time. So they are really both working for you, and they're not going to leave you completely like isolated. They'll definitely be bringing in new connections, new beneficial contacts, whether they be very devout with Saturn and Neptune in this place, or very, what's the word, affirming to you, very helpful in uh, taking perhaps a relatively abstract view or vision that you have, a hope or a dream that you have, to be able to maybe bounce ideas off of them, even just like on a basic level, and then be able to better understand how to actually create that for yourself. But ultimately, I'm very confident that you'll be coming into people like that in this period of time. So you may definitely be called on with these influences here to take on a leadership role or to commit to a cause that holds deeper meaning or represents like something greater than yourself, really wanting to contribute and even being willing to make sacrifices to contribute to a cause greater than yourself is very likely under this influence too. And dreams and aspirations will require then structure throughout this period of time. So that is also something that I'm sure will be presented as opportunities for you. But then you will need to run with it in your own discipline, in your own patience, in order to make those hopes and dreams and things that take place in this house a reality going forward. So yeah, I'm very confident that these placements will really be working for you quite well. Um, but do keep in mind that your own leadership qualities are also really going to serve you well here. And that does include patience and discipline and things like this that we may struggle with in the area of our chart where we have Aries for this transit to basically be carrying through. So yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Gemini rising. So for Cancer rising, this transit is going to be taking place in your 10th house of career and public image. And so your professional life and sense of purpose will be undergoing a major transformation. You may be called to let go of an outdated career path or to redefine then what success means to you throughout this upcoming couple of years. And authority figures and responsibilities may challenge you uh, in ways that are welcome and ways that are not quite welcome. So you may be called on to step up. You may do so wonderfully, and you may then be put into a higher role. But they may also then push you toward a sense of greater self-mastery, where maybe you even want to reach higher than, say, a promotion is offering to you, or you may want to reach more towards something that winds up aligning with you because you recognize you have the leadership skills in order to create that for yourself and be that then for the world independently with Aries here. So discipline, perseverance, and alignment with your true purpose is really going to be essential. If this is not present here, this transit is exactly the kind of thing that's really going to force your hand to basically own that. And then the key here is to balance ambition with authenticity, even when the path ahead seems uncertain. So remaining disciplined, remaining authentic, even if you are questioning whether something's right for you or not, even if you're pretty certain that you're not going to be putting effort into that in a few months' time or something like this, try really to do your best. You'll be able to take a lot of pride in that, for one thing. You'll definitely then have the people that were around you for that maybe be able to like offer you references or support you if you're going independent. You're definitely going to be creating friends for yourself out in the public space if you do really follow through on what you have committed to doing in each given moment. But if then something shifts, say a few months down the line, that's also okay. And really then put the effort into that area of your life. That's just ultimately going to be the name of the game here for you is a lot of discipline and a lot of responsibility is really going to be called for you in this these upcoming couple of years. But it should then ultimately help you to realign your career such that you feel much better served and much better able to serve after a few years here. So, yeah, that I think is what I have for you, Cancer rising. So, for Leo rising, this transit is going to be taking place in your ninth house of beliefs and higher learning, your worldview, your perspective, your broad perspective. So, your beliefs and worldview and understanding of life are going to be being reshaped during this time. Those aspects that I mentioned in the kind of collective uh, reading up front is really going to be critically important for you. So this transit may wind up bringing up then a crisis of faith or a realization that certain philosophies or ideologies that you once followed no longer serve you, or that they have proven to be less true than you previously believed, basically. So travel and higher education, spiritual pursuits throughout this time could wind up then really playing a key role in your transformation during these given years. And so you're really being encouraged to open your mind, to question what it is that you've been taught, to seek a deeper, more authentic sense of meaning in life that is truly based on what you believe and not just based on how you think that the world functions or what you have been told, basically, to believe by any sort of external authority source or outside actors of any sort that you may have deferred to create meaning for you or to create understanding for you, and therefore then come to rely upon for meaning. This is ultimately about what is meaningful for you. What do you truly value? What really is your worldview? What feels truly right for you? And then continuing to test and challenge yourself along those lines to like stress test those beliefs and those values to see if they hold up so that you have something to run with going forward. So yeah, there may be some really wonderful, like I said, experiences with travel and higher learning, books, even things like this, tapping into different types of philosophies. The ninth house is really all about expanding your horizons, expanding your mind. And so, really putting in good, clean effort to better understand perspectives and philosophies, even that you disagree with. That's personally where I would start with this is what is it that you disagree with? Try and study it and understand every single reason that there are people that believe that. That way, you're better understand. Probably you're better able to understand what it is that you don't like about it, and don't just study it from your own perspective. Study it from the perspective of the thing you disagree with. That will help you then to understand more of where you stand and more of the reality of the world around you so that there's less opportunity then to be disillusioned or to have different things that you may have wound up overlooking in different philosophies or ideologies come up as a surprise then later, you know. So yeah, it looks to me pretty cool for you, Leo rising. So I hope that it treats you well. And that is pretty much what I have for you, Leo rising. So thank you so much for being here. So for Virgo rising, this is taking place in your eighth house of transformation and shared resources. And I can certainly speak to this because I'm a Gemini rising, but my Saturn-Neptune conjunction is in Capricorn. So it's in my eighth house that I personally have this. And so for you, this is a time of deep psychological and emotional transformation. It's likely that any part of your life where you are unnecessarily dependent upon someone else for, again, creating meaning for you in your life, Issues then of intimacy, of trust, of shared resources, such as like finances or even inheritances, debts, or even like karmic debts. Those areas may really those things may come up. They may wind up surfacing then and requiring you to confront those fears around dependency and control. So letting go of what doesn't serve you. I know that it sounds super easy. I know that it seems like, yeah, why wouldn't I just do that? But um, with these two coming through here, I'm quite sure that it's going to be pointing out some area of your life where that hasn't quite been the case. Whether this be material or emotional, something will wind up presenting to you as, oh, I thought that this was good for me, but it's definitely not. And so then having the strength and the resilience to release that, even if you feel on some level like you're dependent upon it, ultimately this winds up presenting an opportunity for a really, really, really profound rebirth where you can develop a new sense of personal empowerment and resilience. I will just say, when my conjunction there got triggered by my Saturn return with Pluto also in that house, and Mars was also there, and Jupiter was also there. Um, it There was some stuff that I did not expect to come to a head that did really all at once. So I do just want to say, because this is so similar here, if it seems like, okay, everything is happening at once, I'm needing to respond to all sorts of people in my life that I thought were good for me, that almost down to the last one of them seem to be like creating chaos and trouble and like complications and needing to like put out fires left and right. If it feels at some point like everyone around you has kind of gone off the rails and you are really needing to come back to yourself, one, I would not shy away from taking that lesson on its face. If you need to take a step back from a connection, especially an eighth house connection where there's a lot of trust that's built up there, but it's proving to be a huge problem, an undeniable problem. Um, you can always come back to someone if they're good for you, if you're good for them, you can always come back to them later. But ultimately the eighth house can be where it's pointed out to us that ultimately the person that we can most trust and the person that we can most depend upon is ourselves. So it can strip away pretty much everything else to where there is nothing to depend on because everything is depending on you, kind of a thing. And so I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. I would not feel guilty about taking time out for yourself, if that winds up arising. And yeah, I would just really like tap in, try to definitely take some time for meditation, for trying to tap into your spiritual resources, like beyond the veil, so to say. Prayer and things like that, I think really help throughout this. But ultimately, this, I will say, when I received that like transit straight out of hell during it was during 2020 actually, when that all hit all at once, I do have to say that was both the most difficult, but also without a doubt the most rewarding thing that I've ever experienced in my life. Like I would not trade it for anything because it taught me the vast majority of everything that I know about myself now, and the vast majority of everything that I know about other people, the vast majority of everything I know about relationships and things like this, was all really concentrated during that period of time. So it is so worth any sort of troubles that people give you. I would just, try and be graceful about it, try and really Another thing here with Saturn and Neptune and Aries and the eighth house is boundaries, the importance of boundaries, the importance of knowing where you end and others begin. So actively trying to define that for yourself, and then whenever necessary, definitely speaking about it, and not being shy to say, look, this is going to be kind of a take it or leave it kind of a situation. If it's not cool for you, that is totally cool, but it's not for me. So there's that, and then let people make their decisions whether to stay or go, at least for the time being. You'll know when you are able to then much more fully rely on the sense of deep emotional security, um, and trust for yourself that this Saturn Neptune conjunction in your eighth house is going to be building throughout this period of time. And then you can do all the like frivolous drama people, you can deal with them, and it's not going to be as much of a drain or whatnot. But yeah, if I can just definitely give you some very heartfelt advice. Do not feel bad. Do not be guilted into doing things other than what you can clearly see, because this is going to make things really apparent to you that you were not quite aware of beforehand. Um, you may also really want to study psychology intentionally throughout this period of time, especially things like abnormal psych and like the things that are basically red flags. And there's some really wonderful resources. One of them is Dr. Ramani here on YouTube. That's really great for that. But yeah, that's what I can say about all of that. Again, most significant and wonderful and challenging experience of my life. So, I would definitely buckle up, but trust yourself deeply. By the end, you totally will. But in the middle, you may question it a bit, and other people will probably kind of encourage you to question it. So, yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Virgo rising, for this transit. I hope that it treats you well. I hope that you handle it really wonderfully. I hope that this helped at least a little bit with it. Um, I kind of wish that I knew what I was in for before it came. And if I was, I think the whole process would have been a lot easier because I would have questioned myself less. So yeah, I hope it treats you very well. And thank you so much for being here. So for Libra rising, this transit is going to be taking place in your seventh house of relationships and partnerships. And so ultimately, your relationships, both romantic partnerships and business partnerships, so to say, they're undergoing during this time significant shifts. You may realize that certain partnerships no longer align with your values, which could lead you then to endings or necessary transformations of those relationships. I would not at all be surprised if you wind up very disillusioned with someone that seemed very important in your life. If that is the case, I am sorry to hear that, but ultimately, this is going to serve as a really wonderful learning experience about relationships so that you're able to have more fulfilling ones. So this transit is really going to challenge you to establish healthier boundaries and in relationships become more independent, redefine what you truly need and want in a relationship. And so commitment and responsibility in partnerships and in relationships will be tested. You may come up upon possibly even multiple instances where you've made a commitment that you don't want to follow through on. The advice that I would give is that if it was a reasonable commitment, really try your best to follow through on it. That's usually what's rewarded out of a Saturn-Neptune conjunction. But if it was an erroneous and illusion-based commitment in the first place, then try not to feel bad for establishing boundaries, even if they cross with a previously made commitment, because you can't genuinely, it's like you basically can't have full like consent without full information or knowledge. If there was any sort of an illusory nature to a relationship when you made a commitment to it, or when you made a commitment even to do something for someone, um, you can't really be held to that commitment because it wasn't made in a full understanding of what was going on, especially if the illusion, and this is really where I would apply it, especially if there was an illusion that was intentional on the other side. And I wouldn't so much go along with, well, that wasn't my intention, kind of things that you know are an excuse. It's like, okay, yeah, it wasn't your intention. Well, maybe it wasn't my intention to make a commitment to something that was an illusion anyway. So I guess it's even, kind of a thing. So if something like that winds up coming up, I would just really, truly trust your own eyes and ears and mind when Saturn is conjunct to Neptune, because it does it's not going to create an illusion. It's going to expose an illusion. It really exposes a lot of reality. But there may be certain people in all of our lives, and this is definitely pointed to in your chart since this is taking place in your seventh house, where we do have people around us who engage in these kinds of falsities. And those are going to be becoming clear to a lot of people. For you, it looks like it's very important, though, because of the fact that this is taking place in your seventh house. So, again, commitment and responsibility in relationships will be tested, but those built on genuine alignment with someone will rise to those tests. They will rise to this moment and ultimately then further crystallize those really solid, true and honest and integral, basically, relationships of your life. So the beauty of this is that certainly by the end of this transit, you're going to know who your friends are. You're going to know whether someone was in your corner or not. And so it's truly a blessing. It's just that it's not always fun to discover sometimes that some of the people in our lives were not all that we credited them to be. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Libra rising. I hope that this transit treats you well. And yeah, thank you so much for being here. So for Scorpio rising, this transit is taking place in your sixth house of health and daily routines, tasks, work, coworkers, employees, things like this. And so your daily life, your work habits, your health are going to be in strong focus during this time. If there's anything weird in those areas, you'll know. Certainly, you're going to become very aware of it. And so that can be something that is a little bit heartening, even when it comes to this transit coming through your house of health. You should be able then to know intuitively if something is going on like that with a transit like this. So I would also really trust yourself and not necessarily if you go and get a test and it says that it's fine and you feel like it's not, I would definitely seek I would definitely seek other opinions for sure. But trust yourself. So old routines as well throughout this period of time, responsibilities may no longer feel sustainable. They may no longer feel like like they're valuable to you, like they are really aligned with you. And so you may really then be pushed to create new structures in your life that better support your well-being and your goals and your values, basically your beliefs of how it is that you feel like a valuable day-to-day routine and life would actually play out for you. That should be becoming very clear for you during this time. And so you may really need to restructure a lot along those lines during this period of time. Now, again, health concerns, they could wind up arising. You should hopefully know when they present themselves, and that may then require some discipline and long-term changes. But I would also recommend with a transit like this, to be very proactive with the transit and to run with it. So I would currently basically set out for yourself some things that you can do for yourself that would be health improvements, that would represent health improvements. I often feel like we can avoid some of the worst aspects or experiences of a transit by being proactive about it, by actively engaging in the transit rather than just waiting for something to come up. So you know your health, I'm sure, better than anyone, and you should know best for you what kind of changes that you can make that would really improve that for you, because ultimately we're trying to crystallize something in your life that's going to be more sustainable and contribute to your well-being, much better than what you've experienced in the past then. So this transit really asks you to become more intentional then with how you use your time and your energy, and then ensuring that your efforts align with your a true sense of purpose for you, which in and of itself should also be becoming clear throughout this period of time. What you really want your life to look like should arise, and then opportunities to take step after step after step to get yourself more and more and more into a position to where that is then your life. Hopefully, and probably by about the end of this transit as a process. So yeah, I hope that it treats you well. It's a pretty cool place, I think, actually, to have this transit playing out, just because it functions so well in lightening up that routine of yours, but not having it become like this kind of up in the air, undisciplined kind of an influence. So yeah, that is what I have for you, Scorpio rising. I hope it treats you very wonderfully, and thank you so much for being here. Okay, so for Sagittarius rising, this is going to be taking place in your fifth house of creativity and self-expression, your children, if you have children as well. So your sense of joy and creativity, your personal expression is really being reshaped during this period of time. You may actually have a little bit of trouble or feel challenged to fully embrace your talents. You may find yourself dealing with a sense of inadequacy from this transit. And I hope that if that arises, you'll really look it square in the eye and not take it too terribly seriously. Even if a creative expression, a creative outlet rather, or expressing yourself feels somewhat less enjoyable throughout this time, it's not permanently gone. It's just that this area of your life is getting kind of realigned. Now, you may find that your inspiration is a little bit different. It might feel a little bit more melancholic, a little bit more realist. Like, for instance, if you are an artist, or even you journal or something like this, really a lot of different hobbies where expression is somehow bound up in it, you may find that you're a little bit more solemn, a little bit more serious, that what you are focused on and what it is that you want to express is somewhat more heartfelt, but also so much more tapped into a kind of spiritual, like existentialist, kind of a sense of meaning making, basically. This isn't really going to be the kind of a transit where you can just um, tap into any sort of a superficial uh, superficial hobby or interest and just skate along the surface of it and be satisfied with that. This is going to take you much, much, much more deeply into these areas of your life and have them feel a lot more than also fundamental to who you are. You know, this is an Aries. This is about your identity and your ability to express yourself. And through this, you're really going to want to express yourself truly and honestly and with integrity and with intention. And also then to have your expression mean something for the world as well, with this conjunction taking place in this house for you. So also then romance and like personal fulfillment could also be tested. You may really not want to have superficial relationships. And this is going to then push you to seek deeper meaning in your relationships and creative pursuits. Discipline in artistic endeavors or personal projects is also really going to be paramount and help you to lead to like longer term success and a stronger sense of identity. So this is about crystallizing a longer term vision for your expression, for what it is that you enjoy in life, to deepen that, to bring that to another level so that it feels more like it's fundamentally expressing an aspect of your soul as well, you know. So it should be really beautiful and fascinating of a transit. For instance, if you have children, this would also really deepen those relationships, possibly through commiserating is kind of the word that's coming to mind, but not just like commiserating, but how do I want to put this? Understanding each other's challenges and being able to connect with each other in a very authentic and honest way through the understanding of both parent and child being human and needing to relate to each other as human beings, you know. So yeah, I think that that is pretty much what I have for you, Sagittarius rising. I hope that it treats you well, and thank you so much for being here. So for Capricorn rising, we have this transit taking place in your fourth house of home and family, inner security, your core, basically. So your foundation, your core, both like literal in your home and emotional in your soul, basically. That is all then being restructured throughout this period of time to make it more real for you. So family dynamics may shift, requiring you to establish like healthier boundaries within those relationships, but then also deeper relationships where it's not just, well, this person is a family member, and so I have this XYZ kind of a relationship with them because this is how things are done. This would really deepen those relationships a lot, and possibly through something that you wind up experiencing or going through together. For instance, if there is a family member that is dealing with some challenge, you may get a lot closer to them to help them with that, or vice versa. Or you may then become closer to other family members who also then swoop in, and you can then crystallize those relationships a lot deeper than just roles and titles or the way that we refer to each other, you know, these kinds of superficial things. You may then also feel the need to relocate or renovate or like redefine your sense even of home and family and what that means to you. So if there is a very illusory, untrue relationship within your family, you may even decide to step away from that. If this is a really core relationship, this could even ultimately wind up being like a lot of relationships for some people with family. You may then need to redefine for yourself with Aries here, what family means to you. Family may ultimately wind up meaning tribe and your partner and the created family of, you know, partner and offspring. You may wind up then, you know, creating a branch that basically you can create your own tree from that clipping, you know, of the branch of your family tree or whatnot. But ultimately, if your sense of home or your sense of family seems to be dissatisfying, or harmful or not true, you're not gonna be able to avoid seeing that. And that's ultimately what's going to come up here. It will be up to you to respond to this, but this transit will really support any effort that you make to make these things in your life a lot more real, whether that be needing to establish boundaries, needing to remove yourself from a situation, feeling the need to go somewhere else, experience something else, feeling the need to connect more to something that is in your core that you feel very deeply. And this could even be like a spiritual kind of an origin story that you're needing to tap into. This transit is really going to help you with a lot of that. So don't forget that aspect of it. It's not just a challenge, it is also an opportunity for support along these lines. So emotional security is likely to be a major theme here too, as you work through old conditioning, especially from family and from youth, and then therefore build a stronger internal foundation for yourself. And ultimately, this is going to be a time where the purpose is to create stability that is truly in alignment then with who you are. Not just stability for the sake of it, not just security for the sake of it, not just family for the sake of it, but because it truly feels right, because it's truly aligned. And yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Capricorn rising. I hope that it treats you very well. And thank you so much for being here. So, for Aquarius rising, this transit is going to be taking place in your third house of communication and learning, and also the people, places, and things around you, basically your environment. And so, under this influence, your mindset, your communication style, how even you process information will be transforming and redefined and recrystallized, basically. So you may experience during this time like a sense of disillusionment around certain perspectives or ways of thinking. And that may then push you much more deeply. So this always winds up bringing a sense of depth into matters of like philosophy and worldview and the why of knowledge. You know, why does one believe something? What is the basis? Where is the evidence? You're really going to want evidence under this kind of a transit for sure. That may be something that a word that you wind up really using a lot more. I think that for you, if you're not full on disillusioned with media right now, I think that for you, that's probably going to become a lot stronger of a thing too, because this is really the house of media. So you may really just say, I don't even want to deal with media anymore for a while. And that would probably be pretty good because ultimately then I think what you would be pursuing there is I need to find my own sense of meaning making here. I need to look myself for the evidence rather than relying on like secondary sources of media outlets to explain something for me. Then if I want to know what's going on in the world, I need to actually like look at the evidence myself, trust my own eyes, my own ears about, what's going on basically. So there may be a major significant period of intellectual growth that you experience throughout this time. And additionally, then siblings and peers, again, the people around you as well, those kinds of day-to-day relationships, neighbors, your local community, your relationships with them may also wind up shifting. You may feel a little bit disillusioned even with some of those relationships, and then decide that this doesn't feel true or aligned for me. I would possibly rather be somewhere else. And the thing with Saturn and Neptune in this place is that I'm a little concerned that it would be wanting to leave a situation, but with Saturn there, it could be a little bit difficult to actually do so. I say this as someone with, in my solar return this year, I have Saturn and Neptune, and I've been side-eyeing it in my third house. I've been side-eyeing it a bit, of is there going to be a move that I want to make that I can't quite yet, where I just need to put the steps in. If that's the case, I would not be, what's the word? I wouldn't just give up. This transit's never going to ask you to give up on something that you want, especially something that's really true for you. Now, if you are actually running from a part of yourself, then yeah, this may kind of force you to come around to recognizing, well, if you are dealing with an aspect of yourself that you're maybe trying to deny, but you move somewhere else because you're seeking to change things around you, you're still going to be dealing with that. Um, so it could let you move and let you recognize that once you have, or it could just pull you right back to that, and be like, look, it's not where you are. It's this aspect, of control that you have allowed over yourself by the things around you, So it's in ultimately then that answer is in you to not allow for that kind of, control. Something along those lines, I would not be surprised if it winds up, arising for you. Now, this is also then a time to refine your communication skills, to really focus strongly on like critical thinking, and develop a much more structured and a disciplined approach then to learning too. So I would not shy away from coursework or reading a whole heck ton, and really trying to build and build and build your understanding of what's around you and your sense of where you truly being you truly then wind up fitting into that, and not trying to fit into that, but where you truly do, likely that is very different from where you're at going into this transit. And you may feel like, no, it's cool, I'm aligned. It's all good. I would not be surprised if there are little subtle things that wind up then presenting themselves to you where you do wind up redefining your role relative to what it is that's around you, throughout this period of time. It should be pretty solid, but yeah, I hope that it treats you well. It's not like a rough place to have this playing out, but I think that, it will be one of the more fascinating ways to have this play out, especially because your level of like intelligence and understanding is really likely to be really deepened, throughout this period of time. So yeah, like I said, I hope it treats you well, and that is what I have for you, Aquarius rising. So. Last but not least, for Pisces rising, this is going to be taking place in your second house of, finances and, self-worth, security, your sense of internal and external resources. So your relationship with money, with values, with self-worth will be undergoing a major, shift and change throughout this period of time. You're going to be redefining that for yourself, throughout this time. You may find that you are somewhat less, especially as a Pisces rising, you may find that you are somewhat less materialistic through this time, and that what you truly value about money is that it buys freedom in in Aries here. You may already have a bit of a sense of that having Aries in your second house, but I think that this is really going to make any sort of illusions around, your relationship with finance and money and what it means to you really fall away. And that can then help you to understand how to not just feel like what I like about money is that it offers me a sense of greater freedom. Taking that then to how can I not only be freer by having money, but how can I be freer in how I'm making it, to where you can really draw a lot of that Aries energy into all sides of, income and resources and so on throughout this period of time. So there may be some financial habits or beliefs that you have been carrying that aren't serving you anymore. And those should also be becoming very clear throughout this period of time. And that could then potentially help you to get yourself in a position to also be in a very independent way, bringing in income. And you may then find that like stability and discipline in managing resources seems quite necessary throughout this period of time. So this would look to me, if I were to just guess, and just be very straightforward about how I would guess that this would play out, it would be if, for instance, you are someone who works for a company, let's say, that you would be really recognizing what money means to you, which is, I like it because it gives me options. It frees me up, basically. But what I don't love about it is that I feel like I'm giving up a sense of freedom by trying to get it, you know? And so how can I change my spending habits in order to save up quite a bit of resources then to be able to buy myself the time, basically, to establish something of an independent income source for me so that maybe hopefully sometime I could quit this job and not have to work for someone else. That is the most literal way that I could see this playing out. But there may be themes of different aspects of that wind up arising for you throughout this period of time. And this would really help you as a transit to go independent in that way. But it would require a lot of effort. So just keeping that in mind as well. So this transit is really going to be then challenging you to reassess what truly brings you a sense of security and fulfillment beyond just the material wealth, basically. Refocusing on the fact that no, it's freedom that I want. It's independence that I want. That's what truly gives me a sense of security and fulfillment here. And so then aligning those financial goals with that deeper purpose for you is going to bring you that long-term success to fulfilling what it is that you really want, which is freedom here, and independence and a sense of not necessarily needing to answer to someone else just because money is a thing, in the world. So yeah, I hope that if you have any hopes of going independent, that this transit really helps you along those lines. It totally could. There may be some setbacks that may not happen as quickly as you would like, but as long as you plug away, plug away, plug away, I I don't see why by the end of this that you shouldn't be in a really strong position to really set that off. So yeah, I hope that this transit treats you very, very well. And thank you so much for being here. And thank you to everyone for being here. And everyone, please be good. And I will talk to you later. Bye.